Now, I wanted to make an actually good video about Chronocraft. And I know that's very hard to believe considering that the last video I did, which was not too long ago, was big. It was fucking huge. It was like 30 minutes long, and I hated every moment of actually making it because it was 30 minutes long. That's what happens when you don't actually do YouTube for quite a while, and you realize that maybe a script is actually viable, or bullet points at least. But let's talk about something that I do want to talk about other than the lack of my YouTube abilities after the past 7 years being under the rock and being shit. Chronocraft! I love this thing too much. It's fun to talk about. There's a lot of potential, no doubt about that. Subscription, not my favorite thing. In case you don't know, I made a video back then on Dragon Block C on what I would like to see on Dragon Block C. And if you can't read, like most, this is pretty much what I would want to see in Chronocraft. If you have not played the alpha version of Chronocraft yet, you will know that PvP in Chronocraft is one of the most fun aspects of the mod so far. It is fun overall. It takes a kind of a learning curve to get used to, especially if you're not familiar with it, considering most Minecraft people aren't very keen on some of the stuff, such as what is a parry and what is blocking and all this stuff. It can be kind of confusing at first to get involved in for the average common person or normie and such. Not really normie, but normie is the one, you know. Yeah, you do that. What I said was basically is that Chronocraft is a really great mod, and today we are going to be implementing one particular class or weapon, whichever you prefer to call it, that I believe will make Chronocraft amazing. This, my friends, is known as the Brawler class, or the Gauntlet set. I call it the Brawler class because it sounds cooler. I'm calling it also a Brawler class because in spite of Kurt, because it just sounds cooler than, oh, the Gauntlet set. Fuck your Gauntlet set. Alright, it's the Brawler class now. Frankly, the bad part is about unarmed combat in Chronocraft right now is that it kind of sucks. I mean, you do a 1-2 punch and it registers as one hit. The fuck? Well, why are you doing what? Whatever. It's not the point of the video. The point is, gotta stay on topic. Now, obviously, one of the biggest and detrimental things for Chronocraft, and if we're going to actually make this work for Chronocraft style, we need to give it a weapon. As much as I said it's going to be unarmed combat, there is one way we can actually somewhat get a in-between in terms of unarmed combat and having as a weapon. And this is one of the things, or one of the weapons that Kurt has actually mentioned and thought of actually being added in the game eventually, which is Gauntlets. Gauntlets are going to be added soon, and I want them to do it fucking good, because it's the weapon that I'm going to be using the most if I continue to play Chronocraft, and I'm not scathed and killed. Now, in terms of damage, well, we'll leave the balancing up to the actual pros behind their actual game, depending on how much damage they want to actually put in it. So for those who don't know, who haven't played Chronocraft's Sword and Shield, which are the two, basically the only weapons in the game, if you don't count the fist, really, or unarmed, unarmed overall, I would say that the Sword and Shield are pretty much very similar and akin to Souls-like combat, or even For Honor. So I figured if we're gonna have these new weapons come in, if these weapons do come in or come out, or if a new update does come out at all, I will say that one of the biggest things that I would like to have a little bit tweaked is a different theme for these weapons, rather than just, considering we have Sword and Shield being, the Souls-like aspect of the mod, and now we can have Gauntlets, so I figured we might as well take some different inspirations from different games, or even different genres, which I'm open to discussion in the comment section down below, which I like that stuff anyway. There are two games, like I said earlier, that are perfect for this, and these two games are one from my childhood, and one that is essentially the reason why I title these Gauntlets the Brawler class. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I have taken the inspirations from two of my favorite games that I've loved, one from recently and one from my childhood, and that is from Devil May Cry 3 and, of course, Yakuza. For me personally, I feel like there's a lot of things we can do with this in terms of moveset and in terms of, a little bit of combos here and there for these gauntlets. So, I know Yakuza especially is kind of weird to add on this, considering it's a gauntlet weapon set, and unarmed combat would be more viable for Yakuza's moveset or Yakuza's combat standards, but just bear with me here. Now, in terms of what gauntlet I would base off anything in regarding to Devil May Cry, other than Yakuza, because Yakuza doesn't really have, well, they have weapons that are close to I mean, they had brass knuckles. Of course, Devil May Cry has amazing combat overall. It's fun, kind of crazy, but it's both games both have one particular thing in common, and that's stylish combat. It's just really fun to see Kiryu go out and just motherfucker. The other game for inspiration I had in mind was Absolver for the Gauntlets, but I realized that Absolver has a little bit more than just actual hand-to-hand combat, where you got all these other techniques, different styles and whatnot implemented. It's just really cool to see Kiryu and Dante beat the shit out of these enemies while also looking cool at them. I mean, look at this shit. You can't fucking do this in any other games. So to see this in Minecraft, the Chronocraft can even do these games even more justice by getting some of their moveset inspirations from these two games overall. So, without further ado, let's begin. I personally think that the attacks from Yakuza are a bit more viable, as DMC3's combat is a little bit too stylish for Chronocraft. Now, for the Gauntlets, I wanted to go for something more brutal. I felt like the brawler style in Yakuza 0 was definitely perfect, especially considering how brutal and wide the movements are. I figured as well, considering the brawler style is a very unrefined version of Kiryu's future fighting style that is later yet to develop and become more refined throughout the series of Yakuza, which I figured would be perfect considering it's the first style that you get in the game, and these would be the first ever Gauntlets you would get. Now, as for the actual moveset concept that I got going on for this, you know, these punches, you're throwing your whole body in them, so they're gonna be a little bit more slower than the actual sword, but I feel like personally that the damage output could slightly, you know, make up for that, or at least some of the mechanics that we're gonna talk about here. Left clicking 4 times will do a 4-hit combo or 3-hit combo. How much do they want to do? Basically, where you just punch, and then the final hit, of course, just sends them back a little bit, gives them a little bit of knockback. Now, for holding left click, I thought about if I wanted to have, like, maybe a grab, or maybe even, like, a drop kick. In terms of, like, holding left click, or your heavy attack, if you will, one of the coolest things to have, and especially very inspired from DMC3's Beowulf moveset, is if you were to hold left click, you can charge each individual hit that you do whenever you swing a punch. So for an example, every single hit that you did in the combo can be charged individually, allowing a more heavier and stronger hit, and especially can deal out even, you know, for Chronocraft's case, shield damage or shield breaking even, depending on how long you hold and charge your heavy attack. Of course, the other move that I thought of would actually be perfect for like a heavy attack, or at least holding left click, is my personal favorite, which is also surprisingly also in DMC3 if you haven't played it, and many people would think of this to be in Street Fighter. Shoryuken. Kind of ridiculous, kind of not really viable, but stylish all the more. For a jump attack in Chronocraft, you can actually do like a little smash attack with your sword, and you can basically shield break them. I think a really good move for this is a sledgehammer attack. The character usually puts 2 hands together and just fucking demolishes whatever's in them, basically swinging your both hands like a sledgehammer. In the motion of it, at least. By the way, I want to shout out to KFM for actually giving me this idea, because this is actually one of the ideas that I loved the most because of how just fitting it is for the Gauntlets itself and being the fucking brawler class. Yeah. Now, when it comes to blocking, I think one of the biggest things, of course, is that blocking for the Gauntlets would be much more weaker than the shield. I feel like that would be a little bit more reasonable in terms of balance if they wanted to go that type of route. I'm personally fine if it has the normal amount of shield that you would get from actually having a normal shield, but I feel like it also makes sense though if they wanted to nerf the Gauntlets a little bit, if they had all these crazy mechanics in it, if they consider this amazing list. What if I were to tell you that there is a different defense mechanism to this? Much so, or not really so much as a parry, but rather as in terms of the blocking. If I'm going to put DMC in, I got to put a very significant move or style that is probably that most people will actually understand and get from that type of game. And that is, of course, Royal Guard.
I had a feeling you'd say that. And now, I'm gonna play with...
This specific block is known to be controversially broken with all the other things I'm about to talk about right now, but bear with me here. Basically, what you'd have to do in order to actually do this Royal Guard block, or perfect block if you will, you'd basically have to time your right clicks or timing your blocks right as the opponent's about to hit you. So basically timing each block with every incoming attack that's coming towards you. That being said, the reward would be that you wouldn't take any shield damage or block damage in this case, and especially if you time it right, you would then build up a meter. And this meter, which we're going to talk about later, is probably a very cool mechanic itself already. And I know I'm making this seem like a more of a fanfic at this point, but I think if we had like some type of aesthetic aura around the character or around the person, whoever has like the meter built up on the gauntlets, basically like this little heat effect, like same thing from like Yakuza, as not only as an indicator for the opponent to know the impending doom that's about to be laid upon them, considering the gauntlets probably won't have as much damage as the sword. Why not, of course, give them a little, you know, aesthetic and whatnot. So while we have this perfect blocking, which allows us to not only nullify any shield damage, but also allows you to build up this meter or bar on the side, what exactly would you use this for? I think that this ability would work the same as a parry, but it's not, in fact, a parry. Basically, I am thinking about implementing the Tiger Drop from Yakuza. Who's next? The Tiger Drop. Die. A well-known and very powerful fucking, that's an understatement. A very, very fucking broken move, apparently. Shit, hoodlums. You have a stun gun? Oh, it's a stun. Ah, that's really good. Die! Oh, he actually killed him. Oh. Die. So how this Tiger Drop would actually work, or Dragon Hook, if they wanted to avoid copyright, which I don't see the problem with. I feel like it'd be a great little tidbit, an Easter egg. That's probably not what Easter egg means, but fuck you. I'm yawning. Anyway, so how this Tiger Drop would actually play is if you were to hold right click and left click, it's basically the same controls and the same mechanics as a parry would, except it doesn't parry. Instead, as an enemy attack is about to land, if you were to right click and left click, you would throw basically a sucker punch to not only deal considerable amount of damage, I would say more so bigger than the base damage of the gauntlets, but nothing crazy, which we'll get onto that later. But especially you would also deal out some knockback, especially for spacing, so it allows you to really readjust your PvP strategy if things are getting heated or like if you're getting pressured. So I feel like a counter hook would definitely be very viable in that sort of situation. Now more so, this is where the heat gauge comes into play, because not only does the heat gauge come into play in terms of visuals, but also in terms of the PvP mechanics side of things. In terms of the visuals, I did say that I wanted that little heat effect that they had in Yakuza to come into play if you actually were to fill your entire heat gauge meter. Let's say, you know, after 3 hits, your heat gauge meter is filled up, and then you'll have like the heat aura around you. This, of course, would not make every single JoJo fan cream across the world, but also, it would actually serve as a great indicator of what the impending doom is about to be laid upon the opponent. And also, give the opponent information that the person now has this comeback mechanic, which if you actually were to fill the meter up, or this heat gauge meter up all the way, after you've perfect blocked, let's say 3 times, the next time you actually were to do a Tiger Drop, once your meter is filled up, you would then deal double the damage, and especially deal even more knockback. Now, while this sounds all great and dandy, there is some drawbacks to this Tiger Drop, which, frankly, there really is no drawbacks to the actual canonical version of the Tiger Drop. There are no weaknesses for the Tiger Drop, really, but let's say, for an example, since you can right-click and left-click to perform this counter drop, or this Tiger Drop. Since you have control over this Tiger Drop, I would say if you were to actually whiff it and miss the Tiger Drop hit, let's say someone dodges backwards and you accidentally whiff your Tiger Drop, you would not only be stuck in a long recovery animation as so if you were to whiff a parry in Chronocraft, but also you would lose all the heat that you had built up from all those perfect blocks, which would then be the death of you probably. Now, instead of a Tiger Drop, which I thought was the best thing ever, and instead of actually having that, I actually had an alternative to this, which holding right click and then left clicking would actually do a grab instead, and basically you'd be able to grab them and then left click as you have them grabbed, and then basically beat the fuck out of them. Just fuck back. I think the 4th hit will definitely deal the finishing blow and knock them back from you, giving you both some spacing and, you know, I'd say good balancing. And then after that, once you have the grab, you're then able to... Wait, what? This has just been mostly from Yakuza because you've been obsessed with it, right? Yes. Continue. But yeah, that's pretty much it so far I have for the Brawler class. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section and down below. Everything I said so far, would you actually like to see implemented in Chronocraft for the Gauntlets moveset? Or would you actually prefer something else you had in mind? If you guys want to put in the comment section down below, feel free. With that being said and done, that is pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe as always. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye!